2010, the year where many consider to be WWE's worst. Do I agree with that sentiment? Hell no. Back then I thought I was cool for hating John Cena when I really didn't. And for certain, a bunch of us had that face. Other than that, 2010 is definitely a year of missed opportunities. The thing is, because there were so many departures, it would allow the new stars to integrate well and get pushed. However, when that happened, the wrestlers were either A, not ready, B, not ready, or C, they lost a very important match to the human version of a Nokia phone. The product at the time wasn't heat or anything you must watch, but there was a few gems. You just had to watch 100 Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston matches to get through it. You also had to watch embarrassing guest host moments where they have the Bella Twins attached to them every time. And on the other side, Batista was the biggest diva of them all. He was very compelling in his heel run, showed that he ain't no one-trick pony. The Miz's rise is amongst my favorite things of the entire year. Randy Orton was the most over wrestler in a while and was the PG Stone Cold with his untrustworthy trait. There's always good and bad for each year. This is a minor thing, but it also helps for 2010 that SVR 2011 came out. One of my favorite WWE games ever. Looking back on WrestleMania 26, it was kinda hot at the time. In my school, the build was all the kids talked about, and this didn't really happen in previous years. Me personally, I was very interested, but then again, this is kid me. I used to watch WWE Superstars every week. The matches and their build were far too electric to ignore, whether it be Edge and Chris Jericho, John Cena and Batista, or even Bret Hart and Mr. McMahon. I was glued to the screen. One story is about redemption, another was about closure. Anyways, WrestleMania 26 was held in the University of Phoenix Arena in Glendale, Arizona on March 28, 2010. 72,219 were in attendance, and the buy rate was 885,000, which was lower than 2009's 960,000. It's weird that the show had a lower buy rate because, in my opinion, there was more hype and star power with WrestleMania 26. The theme songs for the event were Thunderstruck by AC/DC, which was also in Madden 11, Be Yourself by Audioslave, which was the 2005 Diva Search theme, and of course I Made It by Cash Money Records, Kevin Rudolph, Jay Sean, Birdman, and Lil Wayne. Alright, before this video starts, I just want to mention the original plans quickly. These are just a bunch of rumors, stuff like that, and you could skip it, of course, we got the timestamp over there. But I wanted to pile up a bunch of reported plans for WrestleMania 26. If these plans had gone through, the show would be significantly different. Jeff Hardy and CM Punk. Apparently, there was an idea in place for Hardy to return and face the man who got rid of him in Phoenix. As you know, Jeff Hardy opted to have a TNA run. Drew McIntyre vs. The Undertaker was also another match, and this one is confirmed by Drew himself. All that talk of him being the chosen one was supposed to lead to a huge showdown between himself and the Dead Man at WrestleMania. This didn't happen because Drew wasn't ready for that match just yet. Sure, he was pushed, and sure you'd want your new guys to be built up, but this was The Undertaker at WrestleMania. It's better off anywhere else. Shawn Michaels vs. The Miz. In the ever-changing landscape of the WWE, guys come and leave, so it's necessary to build up the new guys, and that's what WWE intended to do around 2009 to 2010. You notice that the three guys they pushed the hardest were Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, and The Miz. This one is indeed true, as HBK revealed at one time, saying that himself, Taker, and Triple H were set to face the new guys. This could have been interesting because Miz really developed on the mic at this point and could have stood a chance with HBK talking about how he's a has-been and whatnot. Randy Orton versus Ted DiBiase. This technically happened, but DiBiase was going to be the babyface. Since the crowd reacted more to Orton, they switched it and turned the Viper into a babyface instead, and we all know how it ended up. Batista vs. John Cena was originally the opposite, with Cena being the champion and Batista winning the Rumble. Since Edge returned, they did the opposite, and then there's John Cena versus The Undertaker. If there was any time to have the match, it would be at WrestleMania 23 or WrestleMania 26, and I really think it's a missed opportunity that this match didn't happen in the late 2000s or early 10s. Two of the WWE's most popular, iconic wrestlers, also toughest, going at it. Like, who wouldn't want this match? Alright, let's get into it. Before the show began, Fantasia performed America the Beautiful. The first match on the show was for the Unified Tag Team Championships. R-Truth and John Morrison challenged ShowMiz, The Big Show, and The Miz. The unified tag title idea was good on paper. The main roster was lacking in tag teams, but looking back, it could have been more. ShowMiz had that weird remix theme song. The lyrics are like, I came to Big Show, something along the lines of that. I don't know what that means. But as for Truth and Morrison, they were mostly coasting. John, though, was red hot in the summer, but that momentum didn't continue towards WrestleMania. The Miz in particular was a real star here. It was a snowball effect, he was slowly rising, he was winning these titles, he's having these memorable promos, and it would come to a head in the summer when he'd win Money in the Bank. With that said, he got his early on. Miz was too aggressive and paid the price, and you could hear Michael Cole slowly sucking up to Miz. It wasn't outright apparent, but he definitely swallowed something here. The champion had to rely on the Big Show to bring the momentum to their side. That would have worked if Morrison never delivered a dropkick. He apparently also had a cheat code because he had the hot tag early on. Starship Pain lands on nobody, and R-Truth thrown into the post. Near fall, this allows the Miz to take control. Beautiful rollover from Morrison that almost gets him the victory, and then there's a tag. Morrison off the ropes takes a knockout blow. 1, 2, 3. That's it. The hell? Personally, I wasn't bored by the action because it ends quick. Other than that, you blink and it's over. Often you hear that the opener to WrestleMania is the second most important thing. Here, the Access recap was more important. If anything, my review of the match is basically longer than the match itself. I believe if this WrestleMania happened in these days, today, probably open it up with John Cena and Batista or something, not ShowMiz versus R-Truth and John Morrison. I just don't see it. Okay, the next match is a triple threat match. Ted DiBiase, Cody Rhodes, and Randy Orton legacy face-off. After months of constant bullying and abuse, Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes turned heel. Yes, Orton was the beloved anti-hero despite slapping them, yelling at them, RKOing their dads, all that. On the other side of things, looking back, these two weren't ready for that position. It'd be like Dominic turning heel. It's just not the right moment. Randy Orton came out and dwarfed both their reactions. Also, SVR 2010 predicted this story, although it was a bit different. In the beginning, Rhodes and DiBiase tried taking advantage of the numbers game. Since they were mid-carders, this didn't work yet. Dropkick and they attack. The fans finally boo, and straight out of the Randy Orton book, they slowly isolate him. This beatdown's giving me one of those SVR flashbacks with the annoying legacy handicap bros. Like, damn. It took a while for Orton to fight back, but even then it was a bit overwhelming. He taught them well. In kayfabe, they showed composure and aggression. High and kinda low, DiBiase got a bit greedy here, and there's finally drama. Alabama slamming DiBiase breaks the fall now and all of a sudden gets angry. Like, bro, you were out here doing the same thing. With this, the match picked up. Their contempt for one another finally proved to be a huge problem because the Viper was here. Orton was looking for an RKO, but DiBiase interfered, leading to the crossbody. They found themselves in DDT position, and Orton had all the momentum. While measuring Cody for the RKO, Orton discovered that he could connect with a far more sinister move, the punt. Cody takes it, DiBiase tries capitalizing, and boom, RKO. Off to the mid-card they go, unfortunately. 1, 2, 3. Decent match. The thing is, when people thought of a legacy triple threat, it felt far much grander. Here, it felt like they had to get it over with. It was basically Randy Orton versus two mid-carders that he knew. He destroyed them and went off to much more interesting things. DiBiase had the $1 million title because father did, and he even had Virgil, but I doubt many remember this. Cody, though, established himself off a Divas pole, which I thought was cool if I remember correctly, right? Was it a Divas pole? But yeah, as I said, this match is decent from bell to bell, but when you're thinking of a legacy triple threat and the way they were building it early on, it was supposed to be more dramatic. It is what it is, though. The next match was Money in the Bank. Kofi Kingston, MVP, Evan Bourne, Jack Swagger, Shelton Benjamin, Matt Hardy, Dolph Ziggler, Drew McIntyre, Kane, and Christian. Okay, this was when Money in the Bank was a bigger deal. Nowadays, bigger stars wrestle in the matches, but they've struggled with elevating the wrestlers who win. Like, sure, you win the title, but after that, it's hit or miss. Also, Matt Striker called Ziggler the most sinister mind, and apparently Kane was soft now. Looking at the wrestlers, there was a clear idea of who could win. Kofi, Drew, Christian, and maybe MVP. This is based on how they were pushed at the time. Drew was probably the favorite because he had to qualify twice. With that said, the wrestlers brawled. Drew was thinking smart, but he couldn't really do much here and instead took a couple of finishers. The wrestlers scrambled towards the briefcase and Kane chokeslammed Evan Bourne. Nice spot from Christian on Kofi here, and Ziggler kinda hits a zigzag and tried to steal it. Kane overwhelmed the guys until MVP dropped him with a boot. Evan Bourne barely touched Swagger here and they trapped him in the middle and unlocked a dangerous spot with that. Swagger aggressively pulled the ladder from Hardy, and Evan Bourne meanwhile hit an airborne. He paid the price for going up top though. Matt Hardy took a page out of his brother's book, and damn did it look dangerous. Shelton showed his match experience here, and at this point nobody was close to the briefcase. Ziggler and Kane though did something about it, and he chokeslammed him on top of a ladder, and this is the man Matt Striker called the most sinister. Like, what's so sinister about Dolph Ziggler? Kofi with the trouble in paradise, and because the ladder was destroyed, he tried to make the most out of it. At this point, the fans believed Drew was going to grab the briefcase, but Matt Hardy objected. Unfortunately, he landed directly on his kids, and Hardy basically blew the biggest lead. The man had his hands on the briefcase and even touched the hook, but screwed up. It's the most Matt Hardy thing I've ever saw today. The tag team specialists got rid of Kane and brawled. Christian hit this ridiculous inverted DDT, and it was Captain Charisma's time. Swagger catches up, blasts him in the face with the briefcase, and damn did that sound rough, and captured the briefcase. At least that's how it looks, because him grabbing the briefcase lasted until WrestleMania 27. It was pretty awkward here, like his main event push. Wow, was this one of the most dangerous Money in the Bank matches. Looking at it, I didn't have that thought before the match. There was a few mistimed spots, but other than that, this was very good. The spots that actually did go through were marvelous. None of those spots are going to be top 5 for best Money in the Bank moments, but they were certainly something. The decision to give Money in the Bank to Swagger is perplexing to me. Like, sure, he had some upside, but in a way, it was done for the sake of it. A couple of the guys in the match would have been a better choice, those being MVP, Kofi, and Christian. Christian in particular was the most ready choice, basically, because he had a great run on ECW, and bringing him to the main event scene by feuding with Edge would have been something. That said, I think MVP and Kofi would have had a better run than Swagger. Then again, it's hard to say. Swagger ended up winning the title on SmackDown, and they basically took away everything that made him stand out when he was playing. He was just out there staring up, motionless. The next match was between Triple H and Sheamus, a feud born from bitterness. Up to this point, Sheamus had a push that was almost as hard as Brock Lesnar's, although it doesn't match. It matches from an accolade standpoint in a way. Basically, nobody since then had such a quick push. This unfortunately didn't amount to much for Sheamus. I'm not saying he wasn't a star or anything like that. I saw him as a big deal, but the way they were pushing him, he should have been a bit more notable. By the end of the year, he was in the mid-card. They had to restart the push a year later. Triple H was in the twilight of his career. He was mostly consistent in ring, and you weren't going to see anything terrible, but it was rare to see a classic match involving him. Aggressive collar and elbow. Sheamus is yelling that he's the future, and the game just stares, knowing all he's got to do is bring out the shovel. His experience showed here as Sheamus almost found himself in the pedigree. He delivered an onslaught that led to Sheamus going for a breather, and he also went after the leg and locked him in the figure 4 in honor of Ric Flair. I just know if Flair was tweeting as often as nowadays, he'd say something like this. Even though Sheamus escaped, the damage was done. He used the breather to his advantage, and he finally took control. A brace of backbreakers and the fans boo. He began wearing down Triple H in a multitude of ways, whether it be a headlock or a power slam, and this also helped the game because Sheamus spent too much time here, and it was time for the thing we like to call the final third. More often than not, Sheamus was messing up. He mistakenly got into a slugfest with Triple H and paid the price. The fans get hyped again, the game's hitting a facebuster, and even though he got too ambitious like TNA at the time, he still connected with a neck breaker. A dramatic sequence leads to the bro kick. 1, 2, Triple H kicks out. Apparently it was the first time somebody kicked out of the bro kick, and it was the beginning and the end. Spine buster, and once again Sheamus hits the bro kick, but because he took too long, the Celtic Warrior felt it was time to wrap it up with the Celtic Cross. But Triple H was playing possum and hits the pedigree. 1, 2, 3. It honestly picked up after a while, and I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did, but the thing I loved about it was the story. Sheamus showed that he was good. He was able to stand toe-to-toe with the game and give him his very best shots. It all fell down to experience as Triple H randomly caught him with the pedigree because he took too long. If you're watching the show, you will like it, but other than that, it's not that notable other than being one of Triple H's final full-time matches. You know, they're trying to make Sheamus a new star here, and they're going to continue the feud following WrestleMania, so you know how it goes. The next match was between CM Punk and Rey Mysterio. I love this feud. Around this time period, CM Punk transitioned from an honest yet very calculated heel to a man who had a god complex. He already thought the world revolved around him, but here, he thought the universe did. It was CM Punk's best work as a character up to this point, at least in WWE, because he was fully into and showed great passion. He was constantly virtue signaling and going on in these long tirades about how everyone's depressed, and if they follow his path of enlightenment, they'll be saved and all is good in the world. Punk pissed off a lot of people with this character and even had a grandmother want to jump the barricade and beat him up. He knew what he was doing and also could have done something much bigger with a straight edge society, but it is what it is. He cut a promo again about people's issues and said they'll be saved if they follow him, and Rey Mysterio on the other hand had yet another special WrestleMania entrance. Last year he was dressed as the Joker from The Dark Knight, and here he was dressed as Avatar. Each year he's creative with these outfits, and he easily stands out amongst the best from this WrestleMania. He probably had the best entrance from anybody's on this WrestleMania. Punk's camouflage trunks are low-key iconic, at least in my mind. You know, I always loved that design. In the beginning, Luke Gallows provided a distraction and Punk capitalizes. Matt Striker's out here cracking me up with his words again. Punk got ahead of himself here, but rebounded like he did a year later by bouncing Rey off the steps. On the brink of facing a count-out loss, Rey Mysterio saved himself but ran into a beating. He found form though and was rolling for all of 2 seconds because CM Punk intelligently scouted his cross body. And that was the story of this match. Mysterio was relying on his usual offense and had to adapt. They tried doing the springboard moonsault DDT, but it didn't work. Technically, it worked into something else, so there's that. 619, nope. GTS, nope. Frog Splash, nope. Corner knee and Punk gets ahead of himself. The Straight Edge Society gets involved in Rey's like hold my mask and drops Gallows before hitting the 619. 1, 2, 3. Loved it. Wasn't excellent or anything like that, but it definitely had the potential. Punk showed that he had the composure and skill to combat Rey's high-flying moves, but in the end it was far too much. Mysterio always works well with these shorter wrestlers like Eddie, Kurt Angle, and CM Punk. There's just something special about those matches. Unfortunately for this one, they didn't have enough time to construct something special, but if you gave them 10 more minutes, it would definitely be a highlight of WrestleMania. That being said, I really like this one despite the time. Punk and Mysterio basically put on a light version of their future matches here, and it delivered. For the time they got, which was literally 6 minutes, it was good enough. If you thought this WrestleMania was great so far, well, it's about to pull a big show. The next match was between Bret Hart and Mr. McMahon, a feud embroiled over hatred and lies. Bret Hart was the name and face of the WWF back in the mid-90s. Even if somebody like Yokozuna or Diesel won the title, at the end of the day, it would be the Hitman who hoisted the title in the air. When Hart's contract obligations couldn't be fulfilled, he had to go to WCW, and you know the rest. You know, it got screwed, It's a bit deeper, but there's videos out there for this. Hart finally returns in 2010, and it's shocking. Somewhat. He was one of those guys nobody believed would return, but when he did, they showed that anything's possible. It was one of those things I'll never forget seeing Bret Hart enter the ring on January 4th, 2010. It was also obvious that since Hart was here, eventually a McMahon-Hart match has to happen. Even if the match is going to be as terrible, horrendous, it had to happen. Also, Hart walking down the aisle at WrestleMania feels normal, but when we look at it from the 2010 perspective, the visual is surreal. McMahon felt that Bret Hart deserved a WrestleMania level screwing, so he paid off the Hart family as lumberjacks. One of them was going to be the special referee. There was Bruce, Diana, the Hart Dynasty, and the commentary was raging. Turns out Bruce was the referee. The Hitman couldn't believe this and asked if they cashed the checks, and with that, he revealed that the Hart family were united, and McMahon's smile disappeared as if it was 1995 again. So it was Bret who was gonna screw Vince. Hart delivers some strikes, he sends him to the outside, and it's a mugging. McMahon took a ridiculous bump, but then again, it wasn't bad as a doomsday device in the parking lot, right? He finally stopped the assault by bringing out a crowbar. Hart avoids and goes on the attack, and uses the crowbar instead, and I lost interest. I can't really sound excited here because it's basically Bret slowly beating up an old man as the Hart family watches on. Bret decides to screw us by canceling the sharpshooter and continues. He teases it again and repeatedly stomps as the crowd is just there. This match even had a timeline for Bret Hart, and after blasting him multiple times with the chair, and I mean it when I say multiple, the chair shot sequence lasted longer than Rey and Punk's match and the opening match combined. Then Bret realizes the match should be over and locks in the sharpshooter. Fans cheer because it's time and McMahon taps out. Damn, was that too long. Now, don't get it twisted. The thing is, it's Bret Hart. He does whatever the hell he wants, and if you want an 11-minute match, who am I to tell him otherwise? Because he had been away for 13 years, and if this is exactly what he wanted, he deserved it. Those chair shots, though, were mean as hell. Bret really went all out with those shots. On the other side of things, you can't expect him to hit a bulldog, go for that corner roll-up or anything like that, because he wasn't the same man that he was in 1997 or even 2000. And watching this Inside the Ropes video, you understand why this WrestleMania 26 match was so important to him. On his podcast, he also elaborated about the match, saying, "I've always been really proud of that. I know it wasn't my greatest wrestling match, and I didn't look that great, but I was a much older man, and I had at least one knee replacement, and I was on my way to having another one. And for me, it was all a way to make peace and say goodbye to all the bad feelings and all that. I could be part of the WWE family again, and I'm so glad I did it. It was the best thing I could do. It set me free from all the issues that had sort of gone through and wore me down." So even though the match went on far too long, it made sense for Bret to have it end the way he wanted it to. Even though all was good for Bret, on the other side, you had Bruce Hart out here trying to make some booking decisions like he was paid for it. But he was too shy to ask for the match to main event. Either that or he was gonna, but Bret shut him up beforehand. Another minor thing I'd like to mention is that Bret deliberately wore the jorts here. He felt that the pink attire should be left in the past. Wearing that outfit here in his eyes would damage his legacy, even though we probably won't agree with that. Bret, he sees things differently than us, and it kind of made sense that he wore a different attire here. The next match was for the World Heavyweight Championship. Chris Jericho defended the title against Edge. A long-term storyline. Well, kind of. Edge and Jericho were previously tag team partners, but after the Rated R superstar suffered a devastating injury, Chris started talking trash about Edge, and occasionally they teased the match. It was highly unlikely to happen at WrestleMania because it was reliant on Edge's condition, but he returned and won the Rumble. Chris Jericho won the title, and it was on. I remember at the time, Edge as a babyface was weird because he had been this demon for a very long time. Add to that, we never seen a babyface version of Rated R Edge, but it turned out to be You know, he was constantly shouting spear, 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 and it felt ingenuine. Chris Jericho is entering his second WrestleMania as world champion, which is impressive. Is at the climax of his suit-wearing character, as after here, he was never the same. He slowly fell down the card afterwards. With that said, Edge had a cool-ass entrance with the LED board, descending full of steam. Both men trade exchanges in the beginning. Edge is more aggressive early on, whereas Jericho is trying to maximize his strikes. He avoids the spear, and back in the ring, he goes for the baseball slide. Matt Striker, being Matt Striker, of course, had to make a Sexton Hardcastle reference. At the same time, the champion was trying to wear down Edge. He gets ahead of himself here and runs into the post before taking a spinning heel kick. He rebounds by hanging Edge up, but he screws up here. Clothesline off the apron and crossbody, but Jericho rolls through, and his Walls attempt is thwarted. They trade pinfalls before the champion connected with a boot. The code breaker goes south, and Edge is looking for the spear. Jericho jumps and finally locks in the walls, and the Achilles being hurt also helped the champion, but Edge rolled through and countered. Lion Salt? How about Edge-O-Matic? The match is slowly heating up, and he follows with the Impaler DDT, and it almost got him the victory. Instead of a Bulldog, Jericho went for a strike and pulled a John Cena at WrestleMania 28. And the boot, it just looked so damn personal. The Rated R superstar was ready for a spear, but Jericho connected with a code breaker. After a while, he goes for the cover. 1, 2, Edge kicks out. So he penalty kicked the leg in an effort to re-aggravate the injury. Edge was damaged, and it made things dire for him when Jericho locked in the walls. He transitioned into a single leg Boston Crab, but the challenger fell through. He showed courage and resiliency to reach the rope, and he almost won it with the roll-up. Edge clotheslines him to the outside, and drama ensues. Jericho brings in the title, blasts Edge while the ref's distracted. 1, 2, Edge kicks out again, and at this point, it was basically his match to win. We all seen this before, and we all know how it ends with the babyface winning the title, but then Jericho hit the code break. 1, 2, 3. Stunning. The result was somewhat shocking at the time. You know, you're expecting Jericho to hold the title for a short time and establish Edge as his babyface champion, but that didn't happen. With that said, Chris tried to attack afterwards and throw Edge back on the injury reserve, but this McMahon was far too much for him here, and he took a spear through the barricade. He lost, but he certainly wasn't the one down on the floor. Good match. I think some had some very high expectations that weren't getting me met. You know, Edge had just returned. He didn't have that many matches to find that form, but even then, it was enjoyable, and up to this point, it was one of the best matches on the show. It started off slow, but as time went on, it picked up. Jericho started targeting the leg and Edge sold it well. He made the isolated leg look painful and a huge detriment to his chances, and even then he fought through, and he lost only because of a belt shot in a hesitant moment that had to do with his Achilles. The next match is a 10-woman tag team match. Laycool, Michelle McCool and Layla, Alicia Fox, Maurice and Vicky Guerrero faced Beth Phoenix, Kelly, Mickey James, Gail Kim, and Eve. The sub 5-minute women's tag team match. Vicky early on got ahead of herself and took a beating. She constantly screamed like she was being booked against The Undertaker, and they all hit their finishers. That glam slam though looked far too much when compared to the other moves. All that was left was Vicky. Michelle makes the save and convinces Vicky to go for the frog splash in honor of her late husband Eddie. She hits it. 1, 2, She goes for these mini splashes before going for it again. 1, 2, 3. Damn, was that something. It was the most Divas era match you'll ever see. It lasted 4 minutes, had too many competitors, and some awkward moments. I will also say you can't fault Vicky's frog splash. She's not a wrestler. There was obviously an awkward moment with the pinfall things. It was kind of funny, but she's not a wrestler. You can't expect her to do all these things. The next match is to the WWE Championship. Batista defends the gold against John Cena. This was definitely amongst the most hyped matches on the show. John Cena and Batista rose up the ranks of the WWE together. They toppled heels, won titles, main evented WrestleManias, and as Batista said, they were two of the biggest stars since the Attitude Era. Sometime though, WWE started to focus on John Cena and make him the #1 guy. Batista was annoyed by this, and at the same time, he underwent a significant transformation. He was originally this babyface powerhouse. Now, he was a powerhouse heel with the occasional funny line and excellent promo skills. I just love 2009-10 Batista. He was arguably, keyword arguably, at his best overall, and during this build to WrestleMania, he was portrayed as this unstoppable roadblock in Cena's road to championship glory. It wasn't out of the question to expect Batista to retain the title here, and looking back, I think it should have happened because they ended up having 2 more matches afterwards. Up to this point, the title hadn't changed hands since WrestleMania 21. The last man to do it was John Cena. The Animal had his grandiose WrestleMania entrance with the spotlight directly on him. John Cena, on the other hand, had the drill team on standby for his entrance, and damn did it look cool. Like, it's not my favorite WrestleMania entrance or anything like that. I just liked how Cena sprinted down the long-ass ramp. It just looked very good. That camera angle shows off the grandeur and spectacle that is WrestleMania. I also love how Batista won the spotlight on him during the introduction. Like, the man is throwing a Kanye-esque tantrum here. If this match happened any other year, it would have main evented, I should also note. Collar and elbow tied with Batista having a slight advantage. The challenger though got aggressive, so Batista did the same thing. Big boot in the corner and the fans are content. Cena's neck was being targeted, but he had it on lockdown. Out the rope, Cena connected with a facebuster to get a near fall. The attitude adjustment is countered into a brutal looking DDT. There's another boot, but the challenger is still in it. The Animal tried wearing down Cena, but ultimately he fought back and engaged in a slugfest. This proved to be a mistake as Batista caught him with a neck breaker. Nonetheless, Cena does the comeback sequence and runs into the spine buster. As he's going for the Batista bomb, Cena counters into the STF and the champion reaches the bottom rope. So Cena has to regroup. Not for long as Batista connects with a spear. They go up top where Batista fails to go for the superplex, and instead John Cena successfully hits a super 5-knuckle shuffle. As he's going for the AA, Batista reaches the ropes and hits the Batista bomb. 1, 2, Cena kicks out. Nice sequence and an impressive counter leads to the attitude adjustment. And I just love how when Cena hits the AA on Batista, he just flies in the air and has impressive hang time. 1, 2, Batista kicks out. The fans are all in on the match here. These two were wild, and that wasn't even it. Batista caught Cena off the top rope with a spine buster before going for the bomb. Cena rolls through and locks in the STF. Fans are cheering, booing, moaning probably, and Batista taps out. New champ, great match, and it's kind of unfortunate that these two were kept away from each other for years, but on a positive note, they were much better. They were much better in-ring performance at this point, and in my opinion, it definitely surpasses our SummerSlam match. There was huge moves, an invested crowd, near falls, drama, all that. You couldn't hate unless you wanted Batista to win, and for me, it's the best match up to this point, and it would be match of the night, but Shawn Michaels was on the card and he had yet to wrestle. And the main event, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, the streak versus career. At WrestleMania 25, the Heartbreak Kid and the Dead Man put on the greatest WrestleMania match in history. A match that JR said gave him an out-of-body experience. HBK failed to win and moved on. His mind and ego, though, refused to fully allow him to look elsewhere. A loss haunted him, and he was so desperate to get the match he sought for a year. After Undertaker refused to accept, he had to do something dastardly to get his attention. He finally got the match, but he had to put his career on the line. Michaels was so confident of his chances that he even went as far as to say that if he couldn't win, then he had no career. The build was excellent. He really filled in the hole that was last year's. Last year's had a bit of a story, but it wasn't as grand, as epic as this one. This one had the high stakes, a great promo, you know. Before the match, there was this great-ass promo where Undertaker's like, I'm gonna stop at nothing until I ensure that your career is over. There was that running up that hill promo, which showed just how desperate, how angry, how frustrated HBK was at the fact that he couldn't face the Undertaker. Just so much with it. Both men showed zero fear and had 100% focus on winning the match. Shawn did the rest in peace gesture, and Taker's like, you're gonna pay, you're gonna pay. He brought it and then some with additional speed and intensity. He connected with the old school, but something had occurred to his knee. Chokeslam goes south and Michaels sensed something. He almost hit the super kick, and unlike the usual, HBK was the aggressor. Taker was running away because his knee was a detriment. Clothesline to the outside, and the dead man is considering diving. HBK had it scouted and dropped him. Even then, Taker bounces back and he goes for the leg drop, and while his knee was a problem, it wasn't that much of an issue yet. Until Michaels locked in the figure 4. He's writhing in pain, but hey, it's a streak. So I managed to reverse. Best pure striker emerges here, and Michaels connects with the forearm. Kip up, and he takes a choke slam. The tombstone goes south, and HBK locks in the ankle lock. Over the top rope, Michaels attempts a springboard, but instead takes a tombstone on the outside. His career looks gone. The doctors are out here, but Taker is craving a real victory. Michaels wasn't going to allow that so soon, and he tried going for the last ride, but his leg gave out, and Michaels took advantage. The elbow lands on the knee, the bad knee, and he's locked in Hell's Gate. HBK rolls over, and the streak almost ends it from out of nowhere. Sweet chin music. 1, 2, he kicks out. HBK does it again, but Taker blocks, and the look on his face is like you told him you have a PlayStation. He grabs Michaels, hits the last ride, a super last ride, but it wasn't enough. The second last ride wasn't to be, and instead, there was a sweet chin music. Taker's down on the table, and so HBK goes for a ridiculous moonsault, and he landed on the leg. Once they enter the ring, Shawn tunes up the band, and boom, sweet chin music. 1, 2, no. You know, for a second there, I thought about if the ref hit that mat for a 3. That building would have went crazy. They're fully behind HBK possibly winning it. But then again, I don't know. I'm not an expert on crowd reaction. They might have been stunned because it's a streak. He goes for it again, but is caught and takes yet another choke slam, and it's time. Tombstone pile driver. 1, 2, Shawn kicks out. Taker couldn't believe it, but the fans certainly believed in HBK. And at this point, Michaels is down. Taker takes off the straps and suggests he'd stay that way. You know, he's like, stay down. His ambition and confidence was still existing, but Taker had so much respect and felt that he should stay down. So he does a hand gesture again, and it's like HBK pulled out a cucumber with the reaction he had. And in addition, he slaps him in the face and takes the super tombstone pile driver, the tombstone pile driver premium. 1, 2, 3, HBK's career is over. In the most Shawn Michaels way I should know. He slaps Taker, showing his rebellious nature, and takes a super tombstone. This is easily one of the most iconic, dramatic wrestling matches you will ever watch. Some prefer WrestleMania 25, but for me, it's this match. The reason is because it had this deep story that was rooted in redemption. Michaels wanted that streak victory. It consumed him throughout the year, but in receiving that match, there were 2 ways for it to go. Absolute heaven. He gets to end the streak and is the person everyone talks about, or his career suffers an ultimate demise. It went the latter, and the way the match was constructed was truly compelling. And I'll go as far as to say it was the match of the year in any promotion. The Undertaker was 18-0 and he lifted Michaels afterwards to show some respect. He called him a tough SOB, shook his hand, and hugged him. March 28, 2010 marked the end of Shawn Michaels' in-ring career, and since then, he had never wrestled again. At least that's how I like to think of it. The fans embraced and showed love to the Heartbreak Kid one more time, and since then, the WWE was never the same. Why do you have to leave us? After this, Raw took a nosedive in a way. In an interview with the Bleacher Report, Shawn Michaels explained his thought process on the match and how despite there being little chance of the streak ending, he tried changing them. And I quote, I don't know if this is the right philosophy, but it's one I've always had. I've never felt that you had to make them believe something. It isn't about believing, it's about having a doubt. I didn't need them to think I was going to win, but I wanted them to have second thoughts. I don't think making people believe something is ever possible unless it's innate in them. So you try to capitalize on what they want to believe. There were people who had hope that the impossible might happen, hope that it might not be my last one, and so you just have to put a doubt in there. Catching a fish is catching a fish. How deep you set that hook makes it totally different. Barely setting that hook, you have to ease the fish in, set it deep, and it doesn't take that much finesse or work. That's what you do in wrestling. It's about getting them for just a moment to think they might not be right. That maybe they can't call it, and after that, it's just finesse. From that point on, you're just doing your best to take them on that ride. Even though almost everyone knew that the streak was not going to end the year, there was a little part there, like maybe I'm wrong. Overall, WrestleMania 26 was solid. A good show. The thing that prevents WrestleMania 26 from being great or amongst the best WrestleManias is the lack of another classic match next to Shawn and Undertaker. The other matches were good, even great, but they're not the iconic WrestleMania matches we talk about. Other than that, the show flies by. The most irritated you'll be is probably when the Hitman faced McMahon. Other than that, it's a nice collection of solid matches. The most questionable thing for me is Jack Swagger's win, because heading into it, there was others that had more momentum, and it felt like it was done for the sake of it. CM Punk vs. Rey Mysterio was halted by time constraints. Triple H vs. Sheamus was decent. I liked how the game's experience proved to be decisive to the result. Jericho vs. Edge was nice, and before making this video, I had it as the second best match on the show, but that clearly changed when watching John Cena and Batista put on a show. There was high drama and intensity with that match. Once again, the main event topped it. The thing with this one is that it checks off everything: crowd participation, drama, action, high stakes, all of it, and it provided us with one of the greatest send-offs of all time. At least from a 2010 perspective, because we don't want to think about 2018 at all. Yes, this was a good show. I enjoyed it. I'm sure you will if you watch it, and I'd give it around a 7.8 out of 10. It lacks a little bit to reach that 8 out of 10, I feel, but yeah, it's a good show. I liked it. Alright, what do you guys think of WrestleMania 26? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the attitude adjustment on the like button, and perhaps the sweet chin music on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.